The following podcast is scheduled for one recording with no time limit. Making their way down to somewhere in the ring, Andrew Sanford and Ryan Sprague.
I'm Andrew Sanford. I'm here with Ryan Sprague. This is a podcast where we talk about pro wrestling, usually WWE stuff, sometimes other stuff. For instance, today we're talking about ECW with our friend Chris Cologero. Chris, welcome. Hello.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I got the Venmo this morning, so I'm all set.
Yeah.
I was
worried.
So, thanks. I'm ready to rock. Yeah.
No, it's in pounds, Chris. I hope that's
Oh, yes,
okay.
I know. I'm
Yep.
converting it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks.
good.
It was that or rupees. So it was,
It is what it is.
But like the Legend of Zelda kind, like we would have sent you a vase and you would have
pick
had
a
to pick it
potato
up,
or something. And
break
yeah.
it. Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. You get it. You
Oh
get it.
my God, Chris,
Ryan, go ahead.
Who
No, yeah,
are
go ahead.
you?
Go ahead.
Who are you, my man? Tell us about yourself for our
found-
listeners, our viewers. Who is Chris?
I'm actually Zoom bombing this podcast. I'm a comedian and actor and writer in Los Angeles, and I have an album coming out next month, comedy album. So I've been promoting that, and that's pretty much who I am at this point. I think, yeah.
I will add a little bit of texture to that because Chris and I, Chris, we're very happy to have here, met through Twitter, and I feel like we probably have mutual connections. I used to do stand up about 10 years ago, and hosted a show on 45th Street and 8th.
Oh wow! Okay.
And I was doing my due diligence and saw a set of yours, QED in Astoria, one of my favorite haunts.
Great place.
Astoria,
like
baby.
There's probably some connections we have. But I found Chris on Twitter through these little videos that he does that I cannot recommend enough.
Thank you.
They are so funny. It's my pleasure. It is. And I try not to usually like fan out about certain things when we have guests on, but I do think these videos are very funny. There's one of my favorites is you play a henchman who atomizes somebody and then has like an existential crisis over it.
Yeah.
Which I love. There's the is it Mubbles, the man Bubbles?
Oh, Bubbles for Men, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Wait, so I have a hunch that you probably started doing those things when you were in lockdown, because they feel very. But was that something you were doing before, or is that something that came out of I'm stuck at home and I needed to do something funny?
It's actually interesting because I did a lot of them during the lockdown, but I started just the year before because I don't know if you were in comedy or saw this tangential app that came out called Laugh Exchange in 2018. It came out, and it was like a app where people were submitting comedy videos, and users would vote on their favorites, and then people would win real money if they placed in like the top 3 or whatever.
Whoa.
And so I took that opportunity to, instead of submitting stand-up clips, just was like, what if I try this idea or create this character, which I had been wanting to do, and had a very bad experience doing a character at a show. It like bombed so hard I like didn't do them again. And so I took that opportunity to make these videos instead of doing a stand-up joke about them, just create a world around them. And I started doing like movie cliche characters. And the first one I did was every police chief in an action movie, just screaming and yelling. And that was my first ever like tweet that like took off.
So good.
And like anything else, you keep running it into the ground until it doesn't pay dividends anymore. So I just kept making videos. And so then when the lockdown happened, I was like, all right, I'm home. Let's just keep rocking and rolling. So it was like a little bit of both, really, like a little bit outside and a little bit inside of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So can I ask you, as a stand-up comedian, like, what is it like transitioning to this kind of new medium where like everything's a minute long? It's how a lot of comedians are getting noticed. Like, I imagine it's different from like writing a set to like trying to condense everything into a minute, which is like all you get with all these TikTok things.
Yeah.
What is that process like as a comedian?
It sucks. No, it's a new thing, and like I think it's good and bad. Right? Like a lot of the way media has niched itself out, there's good and bad to it, right? You can find a place for what you love and what you want to do, and you can live in that corner, and it's wonderful. But sometimes you feel the need to have to do those things, and it creates stuff that isn't necessarily as genuine or like from your heart as you might want, because you feel like you have to I have to do this now. I have to put all my stand-up clips online. I have to get crowd work clips. I have to do this. And you're also now, and this is also for acting, but you are your writer, editor, producer, costume designer, lighting person, sound person, you have to do all these jobs. And like you said, it's like about a minute video, or if I do like a self-tape audition, I'm setting up all this stuff to do a self-tape that it feels like I just chuck into the ocean after, it feels like I don't hear anything anyway. So, but it also has garnered me like connections with people like Andrew, like I'm so glad that on Twitter, it's still possible to do that, to like have met you, and now I'm doing a cool podcast with you, because it used to happen a lot before, he who will not be named or whatever.
Just ruined it.
Right. But I used to make a lot of connections, and I got jobs and acting work and writing work and podcasts off of doing these things. So it's the push and the pull of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love that we not only connected over your hilarious videos, but also our shared hatred of MLB City Connect jerseys. So
yes, dude. I could talk jerseys all day, man.
That's the worst. Just the worst. I don't understand it. And they're so bad that when a team has a good one, like the Orioles, like I love the Orioles City Connect jersey, because they're just like, they almost have nothing to do with the Orioles.
Yeah.
But so many of them just look terrible.
Oh my god, they look like created jerseys from like via like a 90s video game, where you were just be like, what if I did like purple and pink and then also brown, and you're like, and then it says Padres on it, and you're like, this is awful. And you're like, it looks bad, but you're like, I want it to look bad. Yeah, I hate that. Underrated one. No, underrated City Connect is the Angels. The Angels have a good one. Sorry.
I agree. Yep. Yeah. So Ryan, City
what are these
jerseys? City Connect jerseys are jerseys that are made for baseball teams that are supposed to represent their city or state in a certain way. And some of them it like makes sense. Like Baltimore, there's some Baltimore stuff. The Angels one is good. You're wearing a Mets hat. The Mets ones I actually don't hate, because it's like gray and there's purple for like the 7 train.
Yeah.
And like whereas like
the Mets City Connect hat is really good.
Yes. Okay. Whereas like, and it works for whatever reason, but like the Red Sox, for instance, have that I believe is supposed to represent the Boston City Marathon. So they're like bright yellow with like this light blue writing. They look terrible. They look awful.
It's also like not their. I really don't like when it's like so just not their colors at all in any capacity. Yeah, like the Phillies one is very bad.
Awful,
so awful.
And some of them look the same. The Phillies ones look like the Twins ones.
Yes, they do. I was gonna say, yeah. And the Detroit ones.
Whose decision was this? Like, are they wearing these during games, or is this like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The Rangers specifically, if the Rangers are home on Fridays, or like have a home set for the weekend, they will wear them on Fridays, absolutely, and sometimes Saturdays. But they
interesting. That would make me change the channel, because I'm looking for my Mets colors, my Angels colors, and then I'm like, what ass backwards team is this? I'm not watching this.
I am bad marketing. I am a Yankees fan. In my real fanhood, and I do like that I get it. I do like the Yankees have like not even sniffed a City Connect jersey. Like they're not
Honestly,
even trying to do it,
They're like,
I
no.
respect that.
which I think is cool.
If they did, they'd just be like, we're adding more pinstripes.
Yeah, just
Like,
more,
that's
just like
it.
pinstripes all over the place. Yeah.
Going the other.
Or I could even see them be like, here's our City Connect jerseys. And you're like, but those are just your regular jerseys. Shut up. There are City Connect jerseys.
The City
Leave
Connect.
Shut up. We won.
You don't know nothing about City Connect, okay? They're the jerseys that we're gonna wear.
So, Chris, something we talked about already is you do have an album coming out.
Yes.
And I would like to get into the weeds a little bit, if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Yeah, let's
What's
read it up.
it like? Because one of my favorites jokes about recording like a set or an album is it was like an early, I think it was Patton Oswalt's first Comedy Central special, and he makes a joke about Bush because it's 2004 and everybody kind of cheers, and he's like, yeah, that's right, I don't care whose toes I step on in this room full of people I emailed. Like, so
I remember that.
yeah, so like, what's it like getting just an album recording together? Did you record more than one night? Did you try to curate the audience as much as possible? What went into setting that up?
So what went into setting it up was I set up a lot of headlining sets for myself to work on the hour that I was going to record. And then in terms of like the meat and potatoes of it, I hired sound person, and I hired he also was my editor, and I filmed it or recorded it at a theater in Brooklyn, and I did 2 shows, and I didn't have the luxury of curating the audience as much as I would have liked, because
Gotcha.
I just had to fill up the room. But that being said, it was a lot of people in comedy that I've known for many years, and people who had said, "Oh, I would love to see you sometime," and I was like, "This is the time," like this is the moment. So, coming back to New York, especially, it was kind of interesting because I was able to say like, "Hey, I'm back in New York and I'm doing this," so it felt special. So got a lot of family, friends, old coworkers out to it. So yeah, I felt like I filled up the room with a lot of people that knew me and also were ready to be recorded for an album, which sounds silly, but my wife hosted it and was like, this is for an album. So if you're thinking of having one of those laughs that's like, oh, I really enjoy that, like to yourself, no, it's like, let's get it out loud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was cool in that way. And recording 2 in a night was the first time I had really done that. You
did both in one night?
Yeah, I did 2 in one night. I would probably spread it out if I did it again, but yeah, that was like power through. And the second one was really like, okay, I should have said this like this. I forgot this line. Let's get that tightened up. Let's get some swear words out of it for the Sirius sales, Sirius XM, and boom, let's go again. And then after that, I just had a whiskey and a piece of pizza and felt really good.
Heck yeah, man. How did you feel like you had almost like an extra shot of adrenaline for that second show? Were you kind of riding a first show high, or?
Yeah, I think I knew it had to happen. Like after the first show, I was like, I would love to just lay down. But the fact that it has to happen. So I feel sometimes, when that is like, it's almost like a deadline pushing you, like this is due tomorrow. So it doesn't matter how I feel. Like I have to just do it. So there was a little adrenaline, and I also felt as if the finish line was there. For the second show, it was like, let's run through that, and then the work you put in and the work for tonight is over, and you are good to go.
Nice.
Yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Yeah, so it was invigorating and rewarding to do it. Yeah.
Are you gonna
DIY?
Yeah, I feel like some of the best comedy albums come out of that. Like I always think of Mitch Hedberg's first comedy album when I think of something that feels like very DIY and very grounded. And you can tell, he's also For better and for worse, there's something about being able to just like be in your element without the extra added pressure of like, oh, I am doing this for Netflix, or I'm doing this for Comedy Central, or I'm doing, like there certain things have to go a certain way, and then it's also got to go through producers, and like there's something very beautiful about just being able to be like, this is mine, I have control over it, and what it's going to be is all me.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Congrats,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Thank you. Thank you
Of
very much.
course. Or are you going to do anything fun for the release? Are you going to do like a nice big night at a bar or a venue or something?
Yeah, there's a great shout out to this place, video store in Burbank called Be Kind Video, run by another dude I met on Twitter who I became friends with. He runs this awesome old school video store.
Oh, cool.
The back looks like is set up almost like a basement in the 80s. It's got the TV cabinet and all this stuff, Nintendo. So we've done some stuff there. So I'll do like a little album release there. I'll have I'm not gonna have a physical copy of the album. I'm working on connecting with the label for that, hopefully in the future. But I'll have some merch, and I'll have some QR codes for the album, and hopefully I have a video component that we can screen there that night, and then that'll live on YouTube. So nice. It'll be a fun little night.
And maybe you can get like to go with the 80s aesthetic, you can get some nice like fake betas. It's like, oh, here's a Betamax version.
Oh man, Betamax, a little Laserdisc action.
Yeah,
dude.
That's awesome. Well, I want to ask Chris, before we get to wrestling, kind of the reason we have you here, wrestling. I've always wondered this because I know you and Andrew have both done stand up. I am a slave to a script. I'm a playwright. I've done some acting, but like Andrew knows, you put me into an improv situation, and I am that no Oprah sort of person. Like I don't know what I'm doing. So I want to know, like, either in recording the album.
It's one of the best jokes on that show. I just don't want to let
really
that go by. Maybe one of the greatest jokes ever. Sorry, keep going.
Like with the recording of the album, I assume because you were able to have friends and family there to help support to an extent. The heckling aspect. We're going to talk about a match later on today of like someone who was almost like booed out of the arena, had the worst things thrown at him by an audience who absolutely was against him the entire time. I'm giving away a lot, but what is it like going into a room and knowing like your job is literally to make someone do one of the most unnatural things, and that's laugh. Like, how do you deal with like that constant battle when you get up there of like, either this is going to be great, it's going to bomb, it'll be somewhere in between. But how do you deal with something like a heckler or like a set that doesn't go well? I can't even imagine what that feeling must be like.
I mean, I think it gets easier the more you do it. Early on, both can really throw you for a loop. I mean, the good thing about your first like bomb, like really like bombing, is you will know right away if this is for you. I mean, if it devastates you to your core and you can't get up there again, then you'll know that's probably not a thing for me. Maybe improv or comedy writing or whatever is for me. But if you I think if you bomb for your first time and your instinct is, man, I got to get back up there and get a better set in. Okay, that's the mindset you need. Bomb and learn is always the mantra. I think that helps when you're a young comedian, which is it's humbling. I mean, it's a humbling thing to just have all this, I want to do this, and you go up there and you eat it and people don't like you and you ruin people's evenings. Like they spend money or something, and they're like, God, this is so bad, like let's just go home. I don't know, but you have to, and this is the thing I'm still learning is, be humble enough to go back and why did it bomb? And sometimes it's just the room, it's a bad room, the audience not really into it, or it's a weird big room where they were laughing and you couldn't hear it or something. But go back and figure out why and what you need to change and what can be changed. In terms of hecklers, I mean, again, it's the more you do it, the first time it happens is shocking and weird, and your instinct is to just get mad. And I used to do that a lot, but sometimes you can just talk to them and say, hey, either like, let's have some fun with this, or you say like, hey man, you're actually ruining the night. And every now and again, that's like somebody goes, oh, no, I thought it was helping. And I think it's become more prevalent now with what you were saying about the clips, the crowd work clips. I feel as if sometimes an audience is like, okay, that's part of the show now, which is just not at all what you want. But hecklers are case to case. Like you have to remain calm. You have to like not scream, but it's so hard to say how to deal with it.
Yeah.
Because everybody's different, but also I don't know. It depends on how it's gonna like affect you. Like sometimes it really throws you. Sometimes you just roll with it, and then sometimes somebody gets kicked out. I don't know, but it does make your heart start beating faster a little bit, especially when you're young. When you're young, you're like,
Sure.
No. I have this is what I'm supposed to be saying. Stop interrupting because you're very tied to what you've memorized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's case by case basis. I don't know. They're a strange breed, and I've had good interactions. I've had interactions that have bore funny jokes in the moment that can only ever exist in that moment, and it feels very electric because they know you're coming up with this in the moment. And I think the bar for comedy with a heckler is very low because it's just live, and sometimes you're yelling at each other. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool to me, like that communion between the audience and you, and like it's just such a back and forth. I think it's so cool. I would never have the courage to do what you guys do, so I want to commend both of you for doing.
Oh,
that.
you're nice.
Oh, at
You're
most
nice.
now, most of my stage work now involves getting drunk and reading fake Shakespeare scripts.
I like
or
that.
actually a real one this Saturday. Look, anybody. Oh wait, no, it will have already happened. Never mind. I'm gonna do some Romeo and Juliet this Saturday.
You just bombed, Andrew. You bombed.
Yeah, that's okay. Listen, man. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. And that's it.
Yes.
That's the end of the episode. No,
Holy crap, that was a long intro.
Okay, we're here to talk about some wrestling. We're here specifically to talk about a match from 2006 from a little then called pay-per-view called ECW One Night Stand. A match between Rob Van Dam and John Cena. You could not have two more different wrestlers. Before we get into that, you and I talked a little bit about your experience with wrestling. You were an ECW guy, Paul Heyman guy, we can say. What's your experience with wrestling? When's the last time you really watched wrestling? And and then we'll get into the match.
Okay, so I loved ECW. I was into wrestling a little bit when I was really young, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man, kind of in a way that I just enjoyed them, but I wasn't like in on the storylines. I was just a little young, and then I got really into the Attitude Era of WWE and loved it, and went to a house show at the Garden. I went to King of the Ring at Giant Stadium.
Oh, cool!
When I think Edge won King of the Ring, and Kurt Angle was like suplexing Shane McMahon through plate glasses, like
but the glass didn't break. Yeah. I think, right?
I think there was one where it didn't break. Yeah, and I loved it, and I was really into it. In ECW, I used to try and stay up because it would air on MSG in New York at like 1 a.m. If you stayed up till 1 a.m, you could catch the ECW show. And we would watch that, and then we got really into ECW and got a couple pay-per-views. There was that one of my favorite matches of all time was Mike Awesome versus Tanaka, Masahiro Tanaka. Those were great matches. So very into it. And then after college, I kind of fell out. So it was interesting, like watching this. I was like, oh, this is right after I was losing track of it a bit. So I haven't been like in probably since the early 2000s.
Cool.
Okay.
But I used to love wrestling.
Who was your favorite?
And I loved Chris Jericho. Like Jericho back when he jumped from WCW to WWE, that was like we freaked out that much. Yeah.
His first
that is
entrance,
prime Jericho.
yeah.
And he's got the little like he's got the long hair, but also the little bun coming off to the side.
Yeah, I should have worn it.
Shirt.
I have my Y2J shirt still.
Yes.
Oh
man, that used to be one of my. I'm a sucker for lights go out, and when they come back on, someone is there. I'm just a sucker for that. Fan. And I used to love lights go out, and then he comes out, and he's just standing there when they come back on with the light up jacket with all the so
amazing.
Good.
Yeah,
so good.
I love the whole story on like how they created the Y2J character and all that too. Like
and the countdown.
Yeah, he had this epiphany. He's like, oh yeah, that Y2K thing's coming up. Like there's something there. There's something there. So yeah.
Yeah, Y2J was so good.
Loved it.
I will just a very quick aside. It'll be so funny to like I have twin 3-year-olds, and it'll be so funny when they're like 14 to be like, who knows how they could hear about this? Maybe they'll watch the episode of King of the Hill where they deal with Y2K, but it's like, it was just this whole thing.
Oh my God.
That people were so scared about, and it just dissipated. That was it.
Oh my God. I worked at a video store, and I had to go in the next morning, January 1st. And I was like, oh my God, like the computers are going to like be on fire or whatever. And it was just, they were fine. I just checked in videos and that was it.
Yeah. I know. I almost felt like let down. I was like, I wanted some
chaos,
digital Armageddon to happen.
Instead, like maybe somebody's waiting to exhale reservation got wiped, and that's about it. Like,
that's it.
Like, oh, sorry, you can't get Meet Joe Black on VHS. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, they were hoping like all their late fees would go away or something.
I do like the idea of a very specific kind of doomsday prepper who's just like, oh yeah, I'll return these in a week. Don't worry. And they walk away. They're like, they don't even know the world's gonna end, and they've got an arm full of VHS.
Idiots.
Oh my God, all Fulgrim straight to video movies. I love a mundane big I love the idea of the Illuminati being mundane. What a fun thing that would be.
But yeah, so we are talking about John Cena against RVD WWE title. They even got the nice spinner belt, which I don't know if it's just nostalgia, but I really disliked that thing at the time, and now it has like a kind of special place in my heart.
Yeah, it was so funny seeing that spinner belt.
Oh,
what a of the moment thing.
Dude, yes. And I can only judge so much because I currently have this World Series ring sitting. It's a replica, of course. But what it does is it kind of flips around. So the center flips. I'm so sorry for the people only listening, but like that flips in and out.
Nice.
It is so tacky, and I love it.
I
love how tacky it is.
So, Andrew, before we get into the match with Chris,
sure.
I need some setup for this because, like Chris, I wasn't watching at this time. I was just like, I was out of it. Like 2000s Cena. I've actually never watched an entire Cena match from start to finish. Like,
really?
That was a period of my life just gone. The entire
even within
Cena
the last
run.
couple of years. Have you never seen any of the Cena versus Rock matches?
No.
I will
say I watched the small run he had last year. You know, in the WWE when he came
where
back,
he
did a bunch of SmackDowns.
Yeah, and like injured both arms at one point.
So like, what was going on at this time? Like, why was ECW involved? Why was Cena wrestling Van Dam? What, like, give me some context for this.
So this was post WWE buying ECW, and I forget if they were like real or not, but there were always rumors that Vince McMahon was bankrolling ECW towards the end of its tenure. And he clearly had a better relationship with the people there than the people at WCW, just based on who he brought over. You see a lot of ECW people that ended up in WWE. And so the year before this, I forget specifically what led to it, but they had their first one night stand pay-per-view, which was that they're like, look, people are still loving ECW. We're going to go to the Hammerstein Ballroom where they used to do their show. And we're going to do a pay-per-view there and do like real ECW stuff. And I believe this was either right at the time or right before when they were basically like ECW is going to be a new brand in WWE.
Okay.
So,
I
and it
remember
was
that.
also the first time they added a third night of shows that wasn't just like a Sunday night heat or like a Saturday night velocity or shotgun Saturday. All these kind of like, well, we're just going to record for an hour before the show starts and then we'll switch it over.
Anything more disappointing than a Sunday night heat? Oh my god!
Oh my
Dude.
god, how is that even
Just the worst.
possible?
Just the worst.
Although
Eh,
the theme music to Sunday Night Heat slapped more than
Yes.
I think SmackDown.
Yeah,
So,
and I think there was nothing more. One of the main reasons that Sunday night heats were so disappointing is because we didn't pay-per-views were like $50-$60, so we
Yeah.
didn't get them a lot when I was growing up. And then you'd watch a heat and they would do something that's like, oh, we're gonna pick that up in like
Yeah.
5 minutes right when the
Yep.
pay-per-view starts.
Yep.
And my little 10-year-old self is just like, that sounds nice. I hope that
have
I wonder
fun,
what's-
everybody.
I wonder what
Should we
Bob
call-
Holly's gonna do.
Hope these West Coast and East Coast elites enjoy their pay-per-view.
Go to commercial break. Commercial break. Commercial break. Go to commercial. Stop. Commercial.
Hello, welcome to our Patreon page. I'm Andrew Sanford, and this is, depending on which way the video is, Ryan Sprague.
Stage left, ring left, ring right.
Ring right, yeah, ring corner
Ring
right.
right.
That's what
Okay.
we're saying. It's in the lexicon now. So, if you're here, it's probably because you've been listening to Somewhere in the Ring, and we thank you oh so much for that. But you want more. You want more Ryan. You want more Andrew. You want more mini episodes. You want some commentaries. You want to get your name on a box. Well, that's what's going to happen here.
You're gonna get shout outs on the show. You can get your name on Andrew's official microphone podium. You can choose our topics and
Yes.
matches that we discuss, and you also get priority to ask our guests your listener questions. So you'll
Yes.
see the tiers right here on Patreon. Check them out. See which one you want to join. You can always go up. You can always go down.
And we're going to keep adding and changing as the show goes on. I love playing wrestling video games. You want to play a wrestling video game with me? We're going to add that into the tiers at some point. You want to hear Ryan and I talking while you watch the Scott Conn, David Arquette, Oliver Platt vehicle Ready to Rumble? Which I'm going to keep bringing up because it's going to happen at some point. You can do that here. We're going to make this Patreon full and fun, and we're going to keep building this community that we've already started that we love so much.
We hope that you will join us even more somewhere in the ring.
So eventually, ECW became a Tuesday night show that was its own brand. It had its own belt and everything. And they tried to do like, oh, it's ECW, but then it was not ECW. And there was a spirit that they were not able to capture that they did capture in these two pay-per-views. Because ECW, for those joining us who may not be super familiar, hyper violent, hyper gritty, very, rated R, like as far as you could possibly go, which is why I was on at 1 a.m. So when they did the first ECW One Night Stand, it was a massive success, and they just did it again. And I don't remember who was champion the first year. I just remember Bradshaw, like the first time, getting into an actual fight with the Blue Meanie and like actually busting him open during a segment. But then we lead into this, which was a match between John Cena and RVD with this kind of idea of like, oh, ECW is maybe like taking over, or they're maybe doing this or that. And it was kind of at the height of WWE initially being like, John Cena is our guy. And if you think that Roman Reigns getting rejected as the guy was big, you know nothing. John Cena it was like Graft versus Host for an Arrested Development reference. It was just like the people just did not want him at all.
So strange.
And it's so and I mean, especially now with how beloved we are. This is a little over a week after this happened, but he just announced his in-ring retirement tour the other night, where in 2025 he's going to wrestle a bunch, and then that's it for him. And I honestly hope he makes it the whole year. I think that'll be the biggest up in the air thing.
I mean, I feel like we're in the Cena-sance now, man. Like
Yes.
he is like
Yes,
he is very well liked, and he
Mhm.
makes cool TV shows, makes cool movies. Like, I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, it's so interesting looking back on this period of time, because I remember vaguely like being tangentially still connected, listening to WWE stuff. Like, my friends were still kind of in, and
Sure.
hearing like Cena was, oh, we hate John Cena. John Cena,
Hated
but he was also everywhere.
Everywhere.
Why was he
Everywhere.
so hated? I mean, he seems
Um,
like the ideal wrestler who should be a champion.
Well, and it's so it is. I think there's a little bit of Vince McMahon, for his many faults. One of his biggest faults is he always wants the same kind of person as champion.
Yeah.
And they've played into that sometimes, like with him getting upset about Mankind or winning the belt, or like all these different kind of. They're like, oh, you give it to this person, why? Oh no! But
By the way, that moment when Mankind won the title on Raw, that was like, that was one of my favorite Raws of all time.
it's great. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Chills,
And it,
yeah.
like, I honestly, I rewatched it recently. I found myself getting emotional.
Yeah, it was
As
so
we should.
unexpected.
Really.
Like,
Yeah.
This is what makes 40-year-old men emotional.
Dude.
But to
And,
think of
like-
like the belt changing hands on Raw in general is so
yes.
strange. And then to
Yes.
see it go to Mankind was so insane.
So cool. So cool. And Vince McMahon likes his big action figure looking dudes who do a lot of the same kind of stuff. And I think you hear it from the audience in this match, as they were just kind of over it, like vehemently. And
Yeah.
I would even argue that, like, because we're going to talk about the like fans basically heckling him, I do think that is more of an indictment of Vince McMahon than John Cena himself. It's this indictment of like, stop pushing these same guys on us over and over and over again. This was even, I think, shortly after Cena had a feud with Chris Masters, who basically looks exactly the same as him, except he's got trunks instead of jean shorts and like a slightly different haircut. But it's just this buff white guy who like moves like a cavity creep that can't put his arms down. Like, it is. I think there's this one in Man of Steel. Henry Cavill has the same kind of body where he's walking, and all I can think is like, we put holes in the teeth. We put holes in the teeth.
I mean,
Like,
yeah, they're real wide up top. They're like triangle bodies.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yep.
So that led to this match, which I was telling Ryan before we started, I think is one of the best matches of Cena's career. And I think it speaks to, and not only is he good in it, he plays to the crowd very well.
Mm-hmm.
It plays with the fact that Cena very notoriously has never wanted to have a heel turn post his becoming a face, because he does some like heel stuff in the beginning when he's rapping. But
Automatic heel.
automatic
Yep.
heel.
White guy rapping.
Bad.
Heel.
Bad. But he kind of holds strong, and I think nothing supports his argument for not wanting to be heel better than this match, because he doesn't have to do the whole heel turn to still get heat from the crowd.
Right.
I think he just he needs to be booked properly. And this is, I think, really good booking.
So again, we will get to the match, and I apologize for all this setup, but why did Cena go to ECW to fight Van Dam? Like, what was the logic between this challenge, I guess?
So I believe it wasn't a brand yet.
Okay.
This was just a pay-per-view like any other pay-per-view.
Okay.
But it was also post the WCW ECW invasion of the early 2000s. One of the worst executed storylines in the company's history. That should have been
terrible.
Should have just been slam dunk after slam dunk after slam dunk, and they just could not do it.
Nope.
I feel like back then WWE didn't really know what they had in ECW. Like, they didn't
100%.
know, but like in
100%.
this, just knowing ECW, like, it's a perfect thing to go to ECW and put the WWE title on the line. Like, that's exactly what you got to be doing. You know, I mean, that an ECW wrestler has a shot at winning the title in an ECW arena on an ECW pay-per-view. Like, that's exactly what all ECW fans want. You know,
Genius. Yeah.
And this is a course correction to that took almost like 4 or 5 years for them to figure out, like, oh, we should just do this. And they already, like, they basically salted the earth as far as WCW was concerned. But what they got lucky with is in ECW is they can always just kind of be there. Like there were always like the indie strong guys anyway who kind of like show up. There was even like a brief ECW invasion storyline in the mid 90s. That is one of the few times WWE did a crossover with another brand. And people liked it. Jerry Lawler didn't like it, but he's like the only one who didn't.
I remember that. I think Tommy Dreamer had a match in that.
Yeah. Like, and they treated it very much in the way that they did when Scott Hall and Kevin Nash went to WCW, which was to pretend that it was real.
Yeah.
And, now that would be almost impossible. And at this point, you're kind of skating that line. But what's nice is that in this match, the crowd makes it feel real. The announcers make it feel real. The refs make it feel real. Like there is so much of the kind of like, this is our ball kind of play to this that made it really engrossing. Like, it makes it a fun watch. And
I mean, I watched on Peacock
nice.
I found it on there, and I watched the intro, and Paul Heyman, Paulie Dangerously, he sells up top. I mean, he's just sells it as like, let's kick WWE's butt. Basically, like, they're coming into our home, and what are we gonna let them? We're gonna let them come in here and beat us. Like, he like sells that idea that ECW isn't owned by WWE, that they're still out there doing their hardcore indie thing, and WWE wants to come slum it with them. Fine, let's kick their butts.
Awesome.
Chris, if you get a chance, Paul Heyman got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this last year.
Cool.
At WrestleMania. And he gave a really incredible speech.
Amazing.
I love
just
him.
one of the best talkers in the biz. And he threw on the leather jacket and the baseball hat and like really leaned in. Really, really good stuff.
Love it.
Yeah, he's incredible. And he's like, there is a reason that the WWE has basically kept him around this entire time. I don't know if you're too, like, he went on to manage like Brock Lesnar, and he worked with CM Punk, and he worked with, or I don't know if he ever worked with CM Punk directly, but they definitely know each other. And then
Stone Cold.
He was a big part of Roman Reigns' success.
Cool.
Awesome. He's just been incredible.
Yeah.
And so this was their attempt to try to breathe some life into ECW, and it worked. Were it not for let me find something that. Here's the thing. So one thing I will spoil right up top, just to jump ahead, is that RVD wins this match, which was like a huge deal at the time. And I just want to make sure I get this right, because I believe he wins the title and then basically gets pulled over like a couple months later, and the cops find weed in his car. And
of course.
Stripped of
that I remember.
I believe that was when this happened. I'm not gonna I'm trying to look it up right now. I'm quickly strolling. I can't find it.
I love that RVD's like title runs were both ended by outside the ring. Well, like I remember when he lost the TV title because he broke his ankle.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. He held it for like the long, like the
for like almost 2 years. I think it was like 23 months or something. And then
Mm-hmm.
and then this is so like RVD can't lose. He can only lose to himself, man.
Apparently.
He's one of those guys where he just sticks around. Like, I feel like he always seems like a real cool dude, like kind of a level-headed guy, especially in interviews. He's never quick to like throw shade at anybody. He'll be honest, but he won't be like openly antagonistic like a lot of wrestlers are. And he's one of the best in-ring performers ever. Like this match, you know what's impressive? When a wrestler can do something like laying a chair on someone and flipping onto that chair, which should only hurt them. Still kind of sell it as just like this. Like, and he sells the hurt, but then it's like, I got that.
Oh, yeah.
Something awesome.
Yeah, he sells her really well. I mean, it's another match that everybody listening either has watched or should rewatch or should watch is a RVD versus Sabu match from ECW, probably 5 years before this match, and they tear each other apart. It is unbelievable.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because I remember one of the first cracks in the armor that we noticed, or that I noticed for the ECW branding in WWE, even though that's where CM Punk got his start in WWE, was on ECW, was one of the first nights they had an RVD and Sabu rematch. And it had the most botches I had ever seen in my entire life.
Really?
Both of them were, and I have a feeling it was probably mostly Sabu. Sabu is very like, he's a great performer, but you could like, some of those guys just weren't polished very well, and that was the appeal to a lot of it. It made it look and feel attainable, I think, and but it was a far cry from what they were trying to do, and or what they had done before. But I would agree. Go back and watch the ECW Sabu and RVD stuff. Any Cactus Jack and Terry Funk matches from back then are always great.
The heck out of each other.
They set each other on fire like it's
It's what I like in my wrestling.
One of my favorites, there was like a tag match, and it was like Tommy Dreamer and Raven against like Cactus Jack and Terry Funk or something. And somebody takes a VCR that had been thrown into the ring and slams it over somebody's head, and then finds the remote and it hits them in the face with that as well.
Insult to injury. That's amazing. Well, speaking of throwing in the ring, I want to like get into. So I feel like the worst thing that can happen on a televised event is the audience becoming more like focused on than the match. You know, that's never a good sign, really. When like, you know, it happens a lot now. You know, they're doing a lot more international shows. So they just did Backlash in France. They did Clash at the Castle in Scotland. And these audiences, and nothing on these audiences, they're incredible. And they're like so pumped to finally have WWE over there that they will go out of their way to make sure they're heard. And it can detract from what's going on in the ring a lot.
Absolutely.
But with something like this audience is its own character in this match so much that it actually works. It works so damn well. And it really starts when Cena does like the signature thing, throwing his hat, throwing his shirt out into the audience.
Oh man, I thought
and
that was
they
so
threw
great.
it back. Oh my god, man!
Incredible.
Like throwing the shirt back over and over again was so good.
And it's such a great character moment for him too, because he just can't get over it. He's like, well, no, clearly you guys, you want this shirt. Like,
you want this.
Oh, I think you threw it in on accident again. I'll pick it up and I'll throw it like
it was like the ECW version of throwing a home run back.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
I looked at the there's a lot of reviews of this match, and they actually, one guy wiped his butt with the shirt and then threw it back. That you don't see that, but apparently that did happen. Yeah,
I believe it. The ECW fans were beasts.
Yeah.
Doesn't surprise me.
I think
we'll get to what they said during the match.
I think there is a moment when they go into like one of my favorite things. RVD, jumps up on the guardrail to do a moonsault, and Cena just pushes him forward, which I was like, God, that's gotta like feel awful for RVD. and then he jumps the guardrail and goes in, and I feel like the ref goes to Cena and is like, we can't do this out here. Because like he's about to like do something out there, and it does feel like the ref is like, dude, this is going to be so bad. Like these people are out of control, and I feel like he like guides them like get your asses back over the guardrail.
That's a great point. That's a great.
Wow. It looks like it. It looked if you go back and watch it, to me it felt like the ref was like, no. Like,
and we know
they're
they're basically running those matches, and I'm sure they just didn't want. You're probably right. They didn't want Cena getting clocked. Like, and I do think he handles it all really, really well.
Oh, he
very well.
Handles it really well. The toilet paper coming in.
Dude. And I think what he does, which is smart, and this can, I think, apply to stand-up too, when you have a certain kind of crowd, you can either plow through, which that works sometimes.
Sure.
Or you can just kind of like deal with what you're being given. And I think this match is a great example of that. It's just like, okay, how can I use this to my advantage?
No, he meets them where they're at, and it's it's a perfect and he stays in character doing it.
Yep.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. And he's not trying to win them over.
No.
And I also love there is such they made a whole storyline out of this between him and Bray Wyatt. Where so often in a lot of things, there's always this in media in general, there's this idea of like, oh, we have this good guy and he's going to get pushed to his breaking point. What? He's going to break. He's going to hit that breaking point. He's going to do something he should have done a long time ago. And Cena never does that. And I kind of love that. Yeah. Like even in this match, even when he hits the ref, it's a little justified. Like it is, there's
Absolutely.
like, there's no him doing something bad. You could argue that like the best and worst thing that Hogan ever did for his career, aside from being an unrepentant racist, is to become a bad guy. Like it revitalized his career, but then produced some of the worst stuff that he ever did in the ring. It's awful. And then the man took down Gawker, and I'm still sour about it.
He stinks.
I would such a Gawker apologist.
I mean,
I am a Gawker apologist.
He also foisted Brooke Hogan upon us.
Which is
unforgivable in its own way.
And then recently, just because I don't want this to go without being said, even though it'll be a little bit afterwards, he just hired 2 female brand ambassadors to sell his terrible beer or something, and they had a week-long contract for all these different events, and then they were black, so he fired them the next day.
Oof.
And I'm dead serious. So she said, she was like, look, we had this contract, and then we were told the next day that it was being canceled after our first appearance, and we were just like, why? And they were like, oh, well, he's canceling all the events all week, and then the next day he's posting things with 2 white women who are promoting his terrible beer, and he does events for the rest of the week. He's the worst.
I hate him.
The
creep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, put him away.
Now, if anything, he is the one person who deserves to be a Funko Pop. That is the hell sentence.
He should be his whole spirit should be captured inside one for eternity.
Yes,
as he
put next to a black wrestler.
I was gonna say,
yeah. That's what I love. Whenever a new wrestling video game comes out, there's always people on Twitter that are just like, "Oh, new WWE game just dropped," and it's them taking every black wrestler in the game and having them beat up Hulk Hogan. It is satisfying every time. It is funny every time.
Would that be considered reparations?
Wrestling reparations. I mean, like, that's about as far as wrestling will go.
Exactly.
How they will rectify their issues. I mean, speaking of, in this pay-per-view, this is a character I didn't know existed. Eugene comes out, and I didn't know about Eugene. And my wife was watching with me, and she's like, Is he playing him?" And I was like, yes, he is.
Yes.
And I was like, this is 2006, and man, that it's just so wrong-headed. I was like, this really they would do that. Really, they would do that all the time, and you're just like, does nobody have any common sense there?
It's like radio levels of bad. Like,
it's so bad.
It is, and that's the first time anybody's mentioned radio in several years.
Yeah, good.
I think
reference.
You're right. Yeah, really good. Good job, guys.
Is it?
In this context, it is.
Yeah,
yes.
There we go.
Only nowhere else in the world could you have done that.
I would like to tell you guys why I thought of Derek Jeter during this match. And
I think of him every day. So
this. I grew up in Western Massachusetts, even though I'm a Red Sox fan, or I'm sorry, a Rangers fan. Good Lord, God. I pointed at the hat and everything. I was there during the first championship in 80 years. I was there, all that stuff, and I never wavered, and it finally paid off last year. But I used to have to go to Fenway pretty regularly. And I want to say in 2004, we got to see a Yankees Red Sox game, which is one of the most intense baseball games that I've ever been at in my entire life.
Especially in that era, the rivalry was through the roof.
I mean, And we got to see, like, my older brother was wearing a Yankees hat at the time, and a grown man got in his face and started yelling at him at one point when, like, David Ortiz hit a double off the monster. Like, it was intense, the worst. So at one point, and I won't say what this is in reference to, because I don't think it's an inherently bad thing to say, except for the context in which it was said. The crowd started a Jeter Swallows chant, right? And I'm like 13, 14.
Yeah, right.
Old, maybe 15. And I was like, what is, and I think I figured it out. Don't we all? I just swallowed something a moment ago. And anytime I hear that said, which is not often.
I mean, I can't imagine you're running into it very often anymore.
Yeah. But then, so that being said, I'm sitting here watching this match, and all of a sudden I just go, Derek Jeter, because there's a Cena Swallows chant at one point that happens during this match. And it was so, Chris, another thing that has happened, we won't say, that is as rough as I'm going to get as far as saying what the crowd was saying during this match.
Right.
But the WWE has gone to great lengths to censor stuff like that since then. To the point where, where The Rock was doing like an episode of SmackDown a couple months ago, and there were long bits of like no sound that people didn't understand because the crowd was shouting like "Die Rocky, die" or something like that.
Oh man, that was the old chant before he got over. Yes. They hated really hated him.
Dude, and his heel turn this year, again, some of his best work that was forced upon him. Long
story.
But they will just like silence that stuff, and I think it was kind of funny. That, I mean, it was a pay-per-view, so they probably wouldn't have done it at the time anyway. But this is right before their PG era, so it's kind of weird to see them kind of flirt with that stuff. But the crowd is vile.
They are foaming at the mouth.
Yes,
against Cena.
And I think the worst, and yes, like they said some profane things. We won't go into it. Watch the match. You'll hear them all. But probably the worst chant is "You can't wrestle."
I was going to say
is like, I can't imagine being being a wrestler in general and doing your job and just having the audience the entire time being like, you can't do the one thing you're getting paid to do. We don't respect you as a wrestler. You have no actual like experience and you're just doing the same moves over and over again, which is what a lot of people make fun of Cena for, which is
the 5 moves of death.
Yeah,
I think is what they call them. Yeah,
but the minute they started chanting that, like, I just like puckered up, man, everywhere. I was like,
no, there's something more actually affecting than like. I'm sure all these guys are used to like profane chants, profanity, like thinly veiled innuendo, like all that stuff. A matter of fact. Like, you can't wrestle chant has no swear words in it. It's just like, wait, well, okay, like let's not be mean, man. Like, like let's not be cruel.
That's not
cool,
even
guys.
Its character.
Cool.
Like you're telling John Cena, like you can't do this.
But I'm sure if I were a fan at the time, like I used to be, I would have been like, yeah, he can't wrestle.
Yeah.
And honestly, that criticism was lobbied against him up until like a couple years ago.
Yeah,
like
I believe that
he could not try as he might, and he tried all the time. People just did not. They gave him nothing. And he never wavered. Like, I think John Cena is a perfect example of just like, he just took so much abuse that everybody was eventually like, yeah, all right, you're cool. You're like, fine. It's whatever, man.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like, he wrestles his butt off in this match.
Yes.
Oh my god!
Like,
he
hits big spots. He hits big spots. He hits, the stair shot to RVD. Yep. I mean, he does some high flying. I think he wrestles incredibly well in this, and he matches he does his best to hit that ECW style. Like, as much as he is ever going to do that, he does it.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
Too, like, we have to give so much credit to RVD. He made Cena good.
Oh yeah,
Like,
yeah,
his
absolutely.
I think they
selling-
both.
Ugh.
It is the perfect example of like both wrestlers doing their best to make each other look good. Like it was, we watch a lot of matches for this show. This is one of the better ones that we've watched for a lot of reasons.
But Cena dwarfs him.
Dude,
I mean, RVD looks so tiny compared to him.
So tiny. And I feel like that was always kind of his thing too. Like RVD was just this kind of like, he was the karate dude. Like he was the Jean-Claude Van Damme. Like that is the.
It is really funny to think of like that. Like I was thinking of, like coming up with Rob Van Dam is so like what if I'm also a Van Dam? And you're like, yeah, that works, dude. Whatever.
Yeah, sure. Cool, man. Cool. Yeah. I love his singlets. Like he would always have these like singlets with just these rad designs on them. Like
yin yangs, baby. Yin
Yes,
yangs.
always.
And I love that
2023.
music. I also like, again, there's something to, we see it now with like Jey Uso with like the yeet and like all that. When all you have to do is move your arms and you can get a whole audience like doing something, just the R.
Oh man. The whole
hype
show
goes through the roof.
Yeah, man. I had forgotten that his nickname was the whole effing show.
Dude.
And they were going wild with it. It was like really like I was like, oh yeah, like, I was like feeling it.
Yeah.
And there's
what I forgot too? Sorry, Andrew.
What? No, go ahead.
Sorry. The Taz. I totally forgot he was an announcer at this point, and he too, like I was expecting him to really be in RVD's corner and just talk all this crap about Cena, but he did such a good job of also putting Cena over and being like, I don't agree with the crowd. I think like this is a tough dude, and he's really holding his own here. Like kudos to everyone.
Dude, seriously, every bit of storytelling in this match, from the crowd to the announcers to the match itself to the refs, to everything is in sync and does what it's supposed to do very well. Like it's really impressive. Almost.
I'll get to it. We'll get to it in a little bit. I want to get to the end of the match with you guys and what you thought about that, because I thought it was almost a perfect match.
Yeah.
That's fair. Sure.
I did love that. I did love Joey Styles just openly at the end rooting for RVD. I love because it's very ECW to be like, like when we're all like in our own bubble, like we have our divisions and our rivalries, but like if we are together facing the WWE, there's no objectivity. It's just no, get him.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're seeing that nowadays too, where the commentators are there's so much more freedom with the commentators now that Vince McMahon is not in their ear every single second telling them what to say, that you are seeing them really say some pretty I don't know, what would you say, opinionated things, Andrew, about the wrestlers? Like, there's always one rooting for one and the other, but it's to the point now where they're like really digging into them.
They're just more free. They're having more fun. They're getting to do what they're paid to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure. I honestly wonder how much Vince was in their ear for this one. But towards the end of the match, we have some interference by Edge, who this is when we're at prime Edge time too. Some prime Adam Copeland, who costs Cena the match, and then Paulie Dangerously himself hits that 1, 2, 3 for the win. I'll give it to you. I will say, like, it would have been nicer to have like a cleaner win. That does feel very much like the WWE, like, oh, well, we can't have him like lose clean. Like, he can't lose to these ECW guys.
That's a good point. See, and that was my issue. I wanted this to be a clean match. I think it would have, made both wrestlers look better. Edge is my favorite wrestler, Chris. However,
really?
Like, I just thought it was utterly ridiculous coming in the trench coat in a motorcycle helmet. However, I didn't know Edge was so big at the time. I would assume this would go on to be a rivalry between him and Cena. Maybe.
He was at his peak there.
Yeah.
Edge.
Yeah, it was like great.
I saw Edge win King of the Ring, and like that was when he was really like getting over and like becoming
right.
Because and distancing himself from who was his tag team partner? Christian. And he was the classic tag team where one guy just goes incredibly over and the other guy kind of just fades into the background. But Edge was huge, but I agree with you, man. Like, it does to me take some of the win out of RVD sales to have that come at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, I now understand what Andrew's saying. Like WWE is not gonna like have their biggest star up and
a
coming
clean
star.
win.
Yeah. I'm surprised they even
frustrating.
had him win, because that was one of the biggest problems with the invasion storylines, was that they were just like, no, like we're always gonna come out on top. This is going to be our victory lap, even though we already put these companies out of business.
No matter what, no matter who showed up, WWE is going to come out on top. But I mean, you can smell the compromise of giving RVD that title in that moment. But, Cena being able to say, well, but you didn't beat me.
Right. I would imagine that's his excuse for eventually getting the title back. Maybe again, I don't know what was going on at this time. Paul Heyman, we got to talk about Paul being the one to do the 1, 2, 3. Like he is somehow now the referee and has like say over that. That was hilarious.
I know,
it's very ECW. Like that's very like nothing matters, man. Whatever.
Extreme rules, man.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, it was awesome.
It was funny that they went through an ECW ref and a SmackDown ref, and then finally, like Paulie comes in and counts it, and you're like, everybody's like, yeah, that works.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I have to get my children in 7 minutes, so we got to do a lightning round here real quick.
Oh,
Chris, what was your favorite moment of the match?
My favorite moment of the match. I mean, to me, the 5-star frog splash from RVD is one of my all-time favorite finishing moves, and to see him at least get to do that and kind of, to me, earns him some points back. But watching that happen onto Cena, I think that's a beautiful moment of unity that we can all. If I could change and you could change, we could change. Rocky IV stuff for me.
Oh, I loved it.
Ryan, what about you?
I'm always about the theatrics, man. So for me, it's never the match; it's the build-up, and I just loved the beginning of this thing where they're throwing the shirt back and they start the "F.U. Cena" and all that. Like, it made me so uncomfortable. Not like as a viewer, but as like I was putting myself in Cena's shoes and being like, "All right, this is your one time to be a heel. Like, embrace it, but just know this crowd isn't just booing you as a heel, like they're booing you as a human being, as someone who came into the business and doesn't actually think you can wrestle." So that whole
some more stand-up parallels there too, because often with stand-up, if you don't do well, it's just like, oh well, this is me though.
You are a reputation of you,
exactly. And I'm starting to see why Andrew picked One Night Stand, and we have a stand-up comedian on. It's all making sense now. You're a genius, Andrew.
No, it was a very happy accident. I was
okay.
I was watching
what was your favorite?
Oh, you know what? This is coming across better than I expected. My favorite was the slingshot into the chair that's set up into the corner, because it's a mix of Cena getting more hardcore and RVD doing one of my favorite things in wrestling, which is where a move requires the person who is having the move done to them to do more of the heavy lifting. Like, he jumps into that chair face first. And it's just really good. It's really, really good. That's RVD and John Cena, One Night Stand 2006. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was like a real stroll down memory lane watching some ECW, so I appreciate that.
Our absolute pleasure. If people want more Chris Cologero, where can they find you?
They can find me on all the socials at Real Chris Cal. I'm that on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. And if you want more of my voice in your ears, you can pre-order my album. It's called Husky Boy, and you can search for that on iTunes and pre-order it today. It comes out August 29th.
Amazing. Ryan, if people want more Ryan Sprague, where can they look?
Absolutely. Well, I do want to shout out Chris one more time. You're mayor of the Grand Theft Auto City video.
Oh, thanks you.
Genius, man.
Thank
I
you.
watched that a million times.
Thanks.
I also
check that out
love
on
the coroner video, the gross coroner.
Other girls,
That's very funny. And I saw Maxine last night, and I can tell you straight up that stereotype still going strong.
oh,
So-
beautiful. I love that. One of my
It's still
favorites.
there, thriving and surviving. Yep.
Yeah.
Andrew, you can find everything. I'm just talking to you, Andrew, not the audience.
Yep, good.
Nobody else
Awesome.
listen to
Yep.
this. Yeah,
That's good. Let me get my notebook.
Yeah. Somewhere in the Skies, my UFO podcast. We are slowly climbing up to number 1 over on Apple. So please, if you can,
Let's go.
rate and review Somewhere in the Skies on Apple and Spotify. Let's get there.
Excellent.
However, everything we do here at Somewhere in the Ring can be found at somewhereinthering.com. We have an awesome review coming up of what was the one that they just did? Money in the Bank coming up.
Well, that would have happened already.
That
by the
will
time
have
this
already
comes out.
happened. So go
Yep.
listen to that if you haven't already.
Yep.
I'm getting my I'm going back in time. Sorry, guys. So yeah, find it. Wow. I think I botched the end of this episode, Andrew.
Let's just power
like
you down,
that.
Ryan. We'll just power
Yeah.
you down. Boop, 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 boop. There we go.
Somewhereintheskies.com, somewhereinthering.com. Thank you. I'm done. Shut up.
Perfect. Yeah. And then patreon.com/somewhereinthering. As always, I'm at Sanford-Son on Twitter. And look, if you want, because I don't talk about it enough, I wrote and directed a short horror film called Pay the Tithe that you can watch on Vimeo. And I've got some other stuff coming out later this year. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Thank you, as always, for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe and all that good jazz. And Chris, at the end of an episode when we have a guest, we like them to ring the bell, as it were, too. So whatever that means to you, ring the bell. Send us out of here.
All right. Ding, 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 ding.
Perfect. You're a natural. Come on.
Let's do it.
See?
Best bell ring yet.
Thank you.
This has been Somewhere in the Ring. Thank you for listening. Subscribe wherever you get your pods, and be sure to rate and review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever possible. We'll see you again soon, Somewhere in the Ring.
This has been a production of LIONSGATE Sound. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever possible. Thank you for listening.